The old wooden floor of the rusty tankard pub groaned under the weight of laughter, music, and a sea of stomping boots. The Friday night rush was in full swing. Football fans crowded tables, students filled corners, and locals lined up shoulder to shoulder at the bar. Glasses clinked, voices rose, and the air smelled of roasted meat and frothy beer. In the middle of it all, weaving through the chaos like a dancer on a stage, was Samantha Sam Hale, the pub's most unlikely legend. At first glance, she looked like any other waitress in her black apron and ponytail. But the regulars knew better. Sam wasn't famous for her smile, nor for her speed with orders. Though she had both, she was famous for something no one ever expected: her raw, breathtaking strength. The challenge came suddenly, as it always did. "Oi, Sam!" A burly man at the corner table shouted over the noise. His friends, already several pints in, smirked mischievously. "Bet you can't carry all these mugs in one go." On the table sat 12 freshly poured mugs of beer, foam dripping over the rims. Each weighed nearly 2 pounds when full. Together, they looked like an impossible challenge. The pub quieted just enough for people nearby to turn their heads. The dare wasn't new. Customers loved testing her limits. But tonight, the stakes felt higher. Sam paused, tray in hand. She could have laughed it off. She could have told them to fetch it themselves. But instead, a slow smile curved her lips. "Watch and learn, boys." She approached the bar, where the bartender had lined up the mugs. Sam flexed her fingers once, then began stacking, 3 mugs in each hand. Then 2 more hooked between her fingers. Then another pair balanced along her forearms. By the time she finished, 10 mugs were locked in her grip, to balanced against her chest. The crowd gasped. Someone whistled. "No way." Sam straightened her back, muscles in her arms taut but steady. Her every step across the pub floor was deliberate, smooth, almost graceful. The mugs rattled slightly, froth spilling over, but not a single glass tipped. As she reached the corner table, the entire section of the pub had gone quiet. Football fans, students, even the bartender paused to watch. Sam leaned forward and, one by one, set each mug on the table with perfect precision. Not a single drop spilled on the polished wood. The burly man who'd issued the dare gawked, his jaw slack. His friends roared with laughter. But this time, not at Sam. At him. "You asked for it, mate." One chuckled, slapping his back. And she delivered. The silence broke into cheers. The entire pub erupted, clapping, whistling, stomping their feet in rhythm. Sam gave a small bow, wiping foam from her arm with a rag. Her cheeks flushed, but her eyes gleamed. "Told you," she said simply, before moving on to her next order. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't showmanship. It was just Sam being Sam, strong, calm, and unstoppable. In that moment, she wasn't just a waitress. She was a force. A reminder that strength doesn't always wear a suit or sit behind a desk. Sometimes it carries 12 mugs of beer through a crowded pub, silencing doubters with nothing but determination. And this was only the beginning of Sam's story. By the time the pub lights dimmed and chairs stacked on tables, Sam's muscles ached like fire. Most waitresses would complain about sore feet, but Sam's pain came from everywhere: calves, arms, back, shoulders, carrying trays, rushing between tables, hauling crates of glasses in the storeroom. It wasn't just a job. It was training Dot when she walked home under the flickering streetlights. Her reflection in shop windows didn't look like that of a fragile young woman. Her arms were toned, her stride steady, her shoulders squared. She looked like someone who had learned to carry weight, in more ways than one. Sam lived in a small flat above a laundromat. The space was modest: peeling wallpaper, a second-hand sofa, a bookshelf lined with worn paperbacks. But it was hers. Pinned to the fridge was a photo of her father in his work uniform, a steelworker who had passed away 5 years ago in an accident at the factory. Beneath it was a note she had written to herself: "Carry on like Dad did. Strong, steady, proud." Every time she doubted herself, she read those words. Sam hadn't built her strength for fun. After her father's death, her mother had fallen into depression, unable to hold steady work. Her younger brother, Jamie, was still in school, with dreams of becoming a mechanic. So Sam took everything on her shoulders, to jobs, sometimes 3. She carried crates, washed dishes, served beer, and helped Jamie with homework in the middle of the night. Her strength wasn't about lifting mugs. It was about lifting a family Dot at the pub. Customers often underestimated her. Some mocked her strength, laughing when she took on more than seemed possible. Others admired it quietly, offering a nod of respect when she carried trays men twice her size struggled with. Her co-workers were a mix too. A few whispered, "Show off." But many, especially the new hires, saw her as a quiet role model. "Sam, how do you do it?" one young waitress once asked, eyes wide as Sam hoisted a tray of 6 mugs. Sam had only smiled. "One at a time. That's how you carry anything heavy in life. One step at a time." Asterisk word about her pub feats spread slowly at first. Locals brought friends just to see the waitress who carries 10 mugs at once. Soon, Friday nights weren't just about football or music. They became about Sam. She didn't brag. She didn't advertise. But every time she delivered without spilling a drop, the applause grew louder behind the cheers. Though Sam knew her strength was being tested in ways people couldn't see. The bills piling on her kitchen counter, Jamie's school expenses, her mother's medical treatments. The mugs she carried were heavy, yes, but nothing weighed more than responsibility. To the world. Sam was just a waitress with strong arms and a steady grip. But those who looked closer would see the truth. Her courage wasn't born in the pub. It was born in sacrifice, in family, in the quiet resilience of a woman who refused to break. And the world was about to test that resilience more than ever before. The rusty tankard buzzed louder than usual that Friday. A football match had just ended, and the losing fans drowned their sorrows in beer, while the winners demanded round after round to celebrate. The bar counter was lined with overflowing mugs, and the smell of fried food and sweat clung to the air. Sam tied her apron tighter, jaw set. Nights like these tested every nerve she had. But she had survived worse. At a long oak table near the back, a group of men in crisp suits leaned back with smug grins. They weren't locals, out-of-towners, probably businessmen stopping for drinks after some conference. Their watches gleamed, their laughter was sharp, and their arrogance filled the room. When Sam approached, one of them, tall, broad-shouldered, with slicked-back hair, smirked at her. "Miss, we'll take, let's see, 20 beers." All at once, his friends chuckled. One whispered, loud enough for her to hear, that she drops half of them. The order wasn't just large. It was deliberate. A challenge. Sam felt the familiar sting of judgment. To them, she was just a waitress, someone to laugh at, someone to push until she stumbled. For a moment, she considered splitting the order into 2 trips, safer, easier. But then, she saw their smirks, saw her father's note flash in her mind. Carry on, strong, steady, proud. Her lips curved into the faintest of smiles. 20 it is, she said softly. The bartender raised his brows but didn't argue. He poured pint after pint, setting them along the counter like a row of soldiers. Word spread quickly. "She's going for 20. Someone whispered in minutes. The pub turned into an arena. Students craned their necks. Locals shuffled closer. Even the band in the corner paused mid-song, instruments resting on their laps. Every eye locked on Sam. Sam stretched her fingers, inhaled slowly, and began stacking. 3 mugs in each hand, to balanced across her wrists. Another for locked between her fingers. She moved with precision, her arms tightening like steel cables. The bartender added more, mugs sliding into the crook of her elbows, one resting against her chest. When the last glass was balanced, the crowd gasped. 20 full mugs. Foam sloshed dangerously close to the edges. Sam straightened. The weight dragged on her arms like anchors, but her grip didn't falter. Step by step, she walked. The room fell silent, the only sound the clink of glass and her steady breathing. Halfway across the pub, one of the suited men muttered, "She won't make it." Sam's jaw tightened. Her steps slowed, but her gaze never wavered. One step, then another, then another. Finally, she reached their table. With deliberate care, she lowered the first mugs, then the second set, then the third. The crowd leaned forward, holding their breath. One by one, every single mug landed safely. Not a drop spilled. For a heartbeat. Silence hung heavy. The suited men stared in disbelief. Then the crowd erupted, clapping, whistling, stomping their boots against the wooden floor. The businessman who had mocked her shifted uncomfortably, his smirk gone. His friends laughed. This time at him. Sam only wiped her hands on her apron and said calmly, "Anything else?" The man shook his head, face red. "No, that'll do." It wasn't just beer she had carried across that room. It was dignity. It was defiance. It was proof that respect isn't given, it's earned. Sometimes one step at a time under the weight of the impossible. And though the pub cheered her strength, that night, life outside those walls was preparing a challenge far heavier than any set of mugs. Long before she carried mugs that stunned a room, Sam had carried burdens no child should. She grew up in a small industrial town, where the clang of machinery and the smell of burning metal hung heavy in the air. Her father, Thomas Hale, worked at the steel factory, a job that left his hands blistered, his lungs scarred, but his spirit unbroken. Sam adored him. Every morning, she'd watch as he tied his boots, shoulders broad beneath his faded work shirt, eyes tired yet kind. He never complained, never once. Strength isn't about how much you can lift, Sammy, he'd tell her, kissing her forehead before heading to the factory. It's about how much you can carry for the people you love. On weekends, when he wasn't too worn out, Thomas taught Sam simple exercises in their tiny backyard. He'd hand her buckets filled with sand and tell her to walk from one end of the yard to the other. At first, she stumbled, arms shaking. But he always encouraged her. Steady steps, he'd say. Don't think about the weight. Think about where you're going. She grew stronger without realizing it. By the time she was 10, she could carry both buckets across the yard without spilling a grain. Her friends giggled at her calloused hands, teased her for being too tough. But Sam didn't mind. She wasn't building strength for them. She was building it for her family. Everything changed when Sam was 15. One winter night, sirens wailed through town. Workers were rushing out of the steel factory, panic in their eyes. Sam and her mother ran through the freezing air, hearts pounding. Her father had been in an accident, a collapsed beam, a fire, chaos everywhere. Thomas Hale didn't make it home that night. Sam remembered standing in the hospital corridor, staring at the cold linoleum floor, her mother's sobs echoing in her ears. Something inside her shifted. Childhood ended in that moment. She knew what her father would have said. Carry on, Sammy. Strong, steady, proud. And so she did. With her father gone, her mother's world crumbled. Depression swallowed her, leaving Sam to hold the family together. At 16, she took her first waitressing job at a diner, balancing school and work. By 18, she was the sole breadwinner, juggling bills, cooking meals, and helping her little brother Jamie with homework late into the night. Her friends went to parties. She went to double shifts. Her classmates saved for college. She saved for rent and electricity. But through it all, she remembered the lessons in the yard, the buckets of sand, her father's voice reminding her, it's about how much you can carry for the people you love. Sam didn't just grow stronger physically, she grew resilient. When customers sneered, when bosses barked, when exhaustion clawed at her, she stood tall. Her arms carried trays, her heart carried responsibility, and her soul carried hope. Hope that Jamie would one day have the life their father dreamed for him. The weight of mugs was nothing compared to the weight of family. Sam's strength wasn't born in the pub. It was forged in loss, in love, in the unyielding fire of responsibility. And while the crowd at the rusty tankard saw only the muscles in her arms, the truth was this: every mug she carried bore the unseen weight of her father's memory and her family's survival. After Thomas Hale's death, the Hale household became a quiet battlefield. Sam's mother, Margaret, once warm and full of laughter, was swallowed whole by grief. Days blurred into nights for her. Some mornings she didn't rise from bed at all. Sam often found her sitting in the dark kitchen, hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea, staring at nothing. Bills piled on the counter, unanswered calls rang, and food in the fridge grew scarce. "Mom, eat something," Sam would whisper gently, but Margaret only shook her head. "I'm tired, Sammy, so tired." So Sam became the mother her brother needed. She learned to cook simple meals, wash laundry, and budget every cent. She held the house together with hands to young, heart to heavy. Jamie, younger by 7 years, was the one reason Sam kept going. A boy with bright eyes and a knack for fixing things. He dreamed of becoming a mechanic. "Look, Sam," he'd exclaim, holding up a broken toy car he had repaired with nothing but tape and imagination. "One day I'll fix real cars, maybe even airplanes," is hope lit Sam's dark days. She promised herself that no matter how heavy her shifts, no matter how tired her body, she would keep him in school, keep his dreams alive. When she carried mugs, when she faced mocking customers, when she worked late nights, it wasn't for herself, it was for Jamie's future. Most people assumed Sam's strength came naturally, but the truth was harsher. By day, she was a waitress, balancing trays and cleaning spills. By night, when Jamie slept and her mother wept quietly in her room, Sam found ways to train herself. She lifted crates of soda bottles from the storeroom as makeshift weights. She practiced carrying multiple trays through narrow hallways without spilling a drop. She timed herself walking from the kitchen to the dining floor, testing endurance. And every time her arms screamed in protest, she whispered her father's words under her breath. Strong, steady, proud. It wasn't about building muscles. It was about building resilience. Neighbors watched in quiet awe. Some pitied her, others admired her. "She's too young to work herself this hard," an old woman sighed. But another replied, "She's keeping that family alive. That girl's stronger than half the men I know." Sam never asked for recognition. She only wanted survival. But slowly, without realizing it, she was becoming a symbol in her community, of perseverance, of grit, of quiet strength. Once in a while, Sam and Jamie would sit on the roof of their apartment, watching the stars peek through the city. "Hayes, do you think Dad can see us?" Jamie asked once. His voice small. Sam hugged him close. "Of course. He's the brightest star out there, watching, cheering you on." "And you?" Jamie looked up at her. "Who cheers you on?" Sam smiled faintly. "You do, Jamie. Every day." Sam's story wasn't just about strength in her arms. It was about strength in her choices. She carried more than mugs. She carried grief, responsibility, and hope. And while the world mocked her as just a waitress, destiny was quietly preparing her for a test far greater than any challenge in the pub. Margaret's condition worsened during the winter months. Some days, she wouldn't speak at all. Other days, she'd cry without explanation. The medical bills from her therapy sessions piled higher, adding another layer of pressure to Sam's already strained finances. One evening, Sam came home to find her mother sitting in the dark again, but this time with a letter in her hands. "They want to increase the rent," Margaret whispered, tears streaming down her face. 40% more. "We can't afford it, Sammy. We can't afford anything anymore." Sam's heart sank. She took the letter, reading the cold, formal language that threatened to strip away their shelter. But instead of despair, something fierce awakened in her chest. "We'll figure it out, Mom. We always do." That night, Sam sat at the kitchen table with a calculator and a pile of bills. She worked 3 different jobs now: the pub, a morning shift at a bakery, and weekend shifts at a local grocery store. Every penny was accounted for. Stretched to its breaking point, she needed more. But where could she find it? The answer came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Patterson, their elderly neighbor, knocked on their door one evening. "Sam, dear," she said, wringing her hands nervously, "I've been watching you work so hard. I have a proposal." Mrs. Patterson explained that she owned a small moving company, mostly helping elderly people relocate. The work was physical, carrying furniture, boxes, heavy appliances up and downstairs. "The pay is good," she said, "but I need someone strong, someone reliable. I've seen what you can do at the pub, and I think you might be perfect for this." Sam's eyes widened. The pay was indeed good, nearly double what she made at her other part-time jobs. But it would mean working 7 days a week, pushing her body beyond what seemed humanly possible. "I'll take it," she said without hesitation. Mrs. Patterson smiled, but her eyes showed concern. "It's hard work, Sam. Harder than anything you've done." Sam thought of Jamie's dreams, of her mother's tears, of the rent notice sitting on their table. "I can handle it." And so Sam added a 4th job to her arsenal: Monday through Wednesday evenings. After her shift at the pub, she helped elderly clients move their belongings: couches, refrigerators, wardrobes that took 3 men to lift. Sam learned to manage them alone or with minimal help. Her body adapted, growing even stronger. Her arms, already impressive from pub work, developed definition that caught people's attention. Her back broadened, her grip strengthened, and her endurance expanded beyond anything she thought possible. But the cost was visible. Dark circles appeared under her eyes. She lost weight despite eating whenever she could. Jamie worried about her constantly. "Sam, you're working too much," he'd say, watching her collapse onto their old sofa after a 16-hour day. "It's temporary," she'd promise, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. "Just until we get ahead." The rent crisis passed, but new challenges emerged. Jamie needed new textbooks. Their washing machine broke down. Margaret's medication costs increased. Each problem required more money, more work, more strength than Sam knew she had. But she found it anyway. In her father's memory, in Jamie's bright future, in her own stubborn refusal to give up. The regulars at the Rusty Tankard began to notice changes in Sam. She was still the same steady, reliable waitress, but there was something different about her presence. Something harder, more determined. When she carried her 20 mugs that night, it wasn't just a display of physical strength. It was a testament to everything she carried outside those walls. The weight of being a provider, a protector, a pillar holding up everyone she loved. The suited businessmen who tried to mock her had no idea they were challenging someone who moved furniture during the day, served drinks at night, and held a family together in between. Their laughter died quickly because they recognized something primal in Sam's steady gaze. This was a woman who had been tested by life itself and had never backed down. And she wasn't about to start now. The Rusty Tankard had become more than a pub. It had become Sam's stage. Every Friday night, someone whispered about the waitress who could carry 20 mugs. Strangers came just to see her strength in action, but not everyone was impressed. Among her co-workers, envy simmered. "She thinks she's special," muttered Carla, another waitress, as she watched Sam receive a round of applause one night. "Always hogging the spotlight." "Yeah," another agreed. "The customers don't even notice us anymore." The admiration Sam received was becoming a double-edged sword. Dotmer Higgins, the pub manager, was a portly man with a red face and a short temper. He liked order, routine, and obedience. And Sam, though hard-working, was starting to attract too much attention. "This is a pub, not a circus," he snapped one night after she pulled off another impossible carry. "Customers are here to drink, not to cheer. Don't make a spectacle of yourself." Sam bit her tongue. She wanted to say she never asked for the applause, never sought the spotlight, but she only nodded and returned to work. Inside, though, a knot of frustration grew. She was being punished for doing her job too well. One evening, Carla decided to teach Sam a lesson. She deliberately left a tray of half-full mugs on the edge of the bar, unstable and wobbling. When Sam turned to grab it, the tray nearly toppled. Only her lightning reflexes saved it from crashing to the floor. The customers clapped at her quick save, but Carla's smirk said it all. Later, in the staff room, Carla sneered. "Maybe next time you won't look so perfect." Sam said nothing, though her fists clenched. She had no time for petty rivalries. Her battles were bigger than Carla's jealousy. The real test came the following week. A group of rugby players stormed in, rowdy and half-drunk, slamming fists on tables and demanding service. They ordered 30 beers at once, laughing loudly. "Get the strong girl to do it," one shouted. "Let's see if she's as tough as they say." The pub went silent again. All eyes turned to Sam. She looked at the mountain of mugs being poured, her arms aching just at the sight. 30 was more than she'd ever tried, more than anyone could reasonably expect. Carla smirked from the sidelines. Mr. Higgins crossed his arms, muttering, "Let's see how she fails." Sam could have refused, could have said, "Split it into 2 trips." No one would have blamed her, but she saw Jamie's face in her mind, saw the bills waiting at home, saw her father's words etched in her heart. She squared her shoulders. 30 it is," the crowd gasped. Even the rugby players fell quiet, their mocking grins fading into anticipation. The bartender lined the mugs in rows of 6. Foam spilled over as he filled the last one. Sam inhaled deeply, then began stacking. One by one, the mugs slid into her grip, fingers, wrists, elbows, forearms. Her arms burned before she even took the first step. The pub went deathly quiet as she turned, balancing a shimmering tower of amber liquid. Step by step, she crossed the floor. The mugs rattled dangerously, beer sloshing over the rims. Her breath came short, sweat dripping down her brow. Halfway there, her knees buckled. The crowd gasped. Carla smirked. Higgins shook his head. But Sam steadied herself. One step, then another, and another. Finally, she reached the rugby table. With painstaking care, she lowered the mugs, one by one, until all 30 sat safely before the men. For a moment, silence held. Then the pub exploded in cheers, louder than ever before. The rugby players pounded the table, whistling and clapping but in the corner. Carla's glare could have burned holes through Sam, and Higgins only muttered, "This is getting out of hand." Sam smiled faintly, wiping her arms. She wasn't chasing applause, but every cheer reminded her she was stronger than doubt, stronger than envy. Sam had carried more than mugs that night. She had carried her reputation higher than ever before. But with every triumph, she made more enemies, and soon one of them would push her into a challenge that could break her completely. The tension at the rusty tankard grew thicker each week. Carla's jealousy evolved into something darker, active sabotage. She began accidentally bumping into Sam during busy periods, hoping to make her drop trays. She spread rumors among the staff that Sam was showing off for tips, trying to make the other waitresses look bad. "She's making us all look incompetent," Carla would whisper during smoke breaks. "Management's going to start expecting all of us to perform like circus animals." Some of the staff bought into her poison, creating a hostile environment for Sam. They'd forget to tell her about table changes, leave her sections extra messy, or claim they'd already taken orders she was supposed to handle. But Sam weathered it all with the same quiet determination she showed everywhere else. She arrived early, stayed late, and did her job with unwavering professionalism. Higgins, meanwhile, found himself in an awkward position. The pub's revenue had increased dramatically since Sam's feats became regular entertainment. Friday nights were now completely booked weeks in advance, and the weekend crowd often spilled onto the street. But he was old school, uncomfortable with change, and increasingly worried about losing control of his establishment. "She's turning my pub into a sideshow," he complained to his assistant manager. "What happens when she gets tired of this? What happens when she fails spectacularly? We'll be left looking like fools." His solution was to create new rules designed to limit Sam's performances. No carrying more than 6 mugs at once. No unnecessary displays of strength. No encouraging audience participation. When he announced these rules at the staff meeting, Sam listened without expression, but inside, her heart sank. These rules would effectively end her ability to earn the extra tips that were keeping her family afloat. After the meeting, she approached Higgins privately. "Sir, those new rules, they're specifically targeting me, aren't they?" Higgins wouldn't meet her eyes. "They're for everyone's safety, and for the dignity of this establishment. My family depends on this job," Sam said quietly, "and on the tips I earn. If I can't do what I do best, I don't know how I'll manage." Higgins finally looked at her, and for a moment she saw something like guilt in his eyes. But it hardened quickly. "Then maybe you need to find work that better suits your talents," he said coldly. That night, Sam walked home feeling defeated for the first time in months. The weight on her shoulders felt heavier than any load of mugs. How could she tell Jamie that his school supplies might have to wait? How could she explain to her mother that they might have to move again? As she climbed the stairs to their flat, she heard voices through the thin walls. Jamie was on the phone with his friend, excitement clear in his voice. "Yeah, my sister's amazing. She's like a superhero or something. Everyone at school talks about her. I'm so proud." Sam stopped outside the door, tears stinging her eyes. Jamie's pride in her was worth more than all the applause in the world. She couldn't let him down. She couldn't let anyone down. When she entered the flat, Jamie bounded over to her with a newspaper clipping. "Look, Sam, they wrote about you in the local paper. Local waitress amazes customers with incredible strength. You're famous." Sam hugged him tightly, making a silent promise. Whatever Higgins threw at her, whatever Carla plotted against her, whatever obstacles appeared in her path, she would find a way to overcome them. She had carried her family this far. She wouldn't stop now. The next Friday, despite the new rules, Sam found subtle ways to demonstrate her abilities. She couldn't carry 30 mugs anymore, but she could make 6 mugs look effortless. She couldn't create spectacles, but she could move with a grace and strength that was undeniable. The crowd noticed. They began to murmur among themselves, asking why the amazing waitress wasn't performing her incredible feats anymore. Higgins noticed too, and he realized he had made a mistake. The pub's atmosphere had changed. The energy was flat, the excitement muted. Customers finished their drinks and left instead of staying for hours, hoping to witness something extraordinary. Revenue began to drop. But Higgins was too proud to admit his error, too stubborn to reverse his rules. Instead, he doubled down, becoming even more restrictive and hostile towards Sam. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test everything Sam had built, everything she had worked for, everything she believed about herself. And in the crucible of that coming challenge, she would discover that her greatest strength wasn't in her arms. It was in her unbreakable spirit. The rusty tankard had never seen such grandeur. Banners hung from the rafters, chandeliers sparkled brighter than usual, and every table was reserved for the annual City Brewery Gala. It wasn't just locals tonight. It was investors, journalists, and even the city's mayor. For Sam, it felt like the pub had turned into a palace. But with that transformation came pressure heavier than any tray she'd ever carried. "Everything has to be flawless tonight," barked Mr. Higgins, his face redder than usual. "One mistake, and this pub's reputation is ruined. Do you understand?" His glare lingered on Sam. She nodded silently. She had carried mugs before roaring crowds. But this night was different. This wasn't just about strength. This was about perfection. Halfway through the night, the mayor's entourage arrived. The pub buzzed with excitement, cameras flashing. The rugby players, the businessmen, even Carla. Everyone watched as the most powerful man in the city took his seat. The mayor's assistant snapped his fingers. 36 beers. Immediately. And, "I hear you have a waitress who can carry them." All in one go. Gasps spread across the room. 36. Even more than Sam had carried. For the rugby team, the mayor leaned back, amused. "Let's see this legend for myself." Higgins froze, then smirked cruelly. If Sam succeeded, the pub would shine. If she failed, he'd have a scapegoat. You heard the man hail. Don't keep him waiting. The bartender lined up the mugs, row after row, golden liquid shimmering under the lights. Sam's hands trembled as she approached. She had never carried this many before. Her arms ached from hours of serving already, her legs heavy. But quitting wasn't an option. Not with the mayor's eyes on her, not with the whole pub chanting her name. She began stacking. Fingers, wrists, elbows. The tower of beer rose higher, heavier. By the time she lifted the last mug against her chest, her body screamed in protest. The pub fell silent. Cameras pointed. Carlos smirked in the corner. Higgins folded his arms, waiting for her to break. Step by step, Sam moved across the room. Her vision blurred with sweat, her breath ragged. The mugs clinked together, threatening to topple. Halfway to the mayor's table, disaster struck. A child darted across the floor, chasing a dropped toy. Sam jerked sideways to avoid him, and the mugs wobbled violently. Gasps filled the room. Beer sloshed over the rims, spilling onto her arms. One mug slipped from her grip, crashing to the floor with a shatter that echoed like thunder. The silence that followed was crushing. Higgins's voice boomed across the room. Enough. She's ruined it. Carlos smirked wider, whispering to another server, told you she'd fail. The mayor raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Cameras flashed, capturing Sam's trembling form, her face pale with shock and shame. She managed to set the remaining mugs on the table, but the damage was done. The applause that usually followed her feats was replaced by whispers, smirks, and disappointed stares. Sam's heart pounded painfully. For the first time in years, she felt not strong, but small. In one shattering moment, Sam's legend cracked. The girl who carried the impossible had stumbled. And as the crowd's whispers turned into laughter, Sam wondered if all her years of strength had meant nothing at all. The crash of that single mug still echoed in Sam's ears long after it had been swept away. The mayor sipped silently from the beer she'd salvaged, eyes cool and unreadable. The crowd whispered, cameras still snapping. But what cut deepest was Higgins's voice. You embarrassed this pub, he hissed once the mayor turned away. One mistake, one. And now we're a laughing stock. I should have never let you show off like a circus act. Sam stood frozen, her apron soaked with spilled beer, her pride cracked. She wanted to scream that it hadn't been her fault, that she'd stumbled to save a child. But the words died in her throat. In the staff room, Carla wasted no time twisting the knife. Well, she drawled, leaning against the lockers. The legend finally falls. Guess you're not so special after all. Another waitress snickered, emboldened by Carla's venom. All those cheers, all that attention, and now they'll remember you for the one time you failed. Sam clenched her fists but said nothing. She couldn't afford to break. Not here. Not in front of them. The next morning, Higgins summoned her to his office. Papers cluttered his desk, but his eyes were cold and clear. You've become a distraction, Hale, he said flatly. The pub isn't about you. It's about service, professionalism. Customers come for beer, not to watch you balance mugs like a sideshow. Sam's jaw tightened. With respect, sir, I've never asked for applause. I only work hard. Higgins slammed his fist on the desk. Hard work doesn't matter if it makes us look foolish. Consider this your warning. Another mistake, and you're done here. Sam left the office with her heart pounding. She couldn't afford to lose this job. Not with Jamie's school fees due. Not with bills stacking higher every month. That night, she sat on the roof of her building, knees pulled to her chest. The city lights blinked like distant stars, but all she saw was the mocking faces in the pub, Higgins's threats, Carla's smirk. For the first time since her father's death, doubt slithered into her mind. Maybe I'm not strong enough. Maybe I've only been pretending. Jamie appeared beside her, clutching a notebook filled with sketches of engines and cars. He nudged her shoulder. Sam, are you okay? She forced a smile. Of course, just tired. Asterisk, but Jamie saw through her. You're the strongest person I know, he said firmly. Stronger than Dad. Stronger than anyone. Sam's throat tightened. She hugged him fiercely, whispering, "Then I'll just have to prove it." The next day, Sam returned to the pub, head held high. The whispers still followed her. Some customers smirked when they saw her, waiting for her to slip again. Carla's eyes gleamed with cruel delight. Higgins watched like a hawk. But Sam moved with steady grace, carrying tray after tray without falter. Her arms ached. Her mind replayed the broken mug again and again. But she refused to stumble. Every step, every lift, was an act of defiance. Failure had bruised her, yes, but it hadn't broken her. Sam Hale wasn't done. Not by a long shot. And when the moment came to prove herself again, when the weight would be heavier, the stakes higher, she would rise. Not just for the pub, but for herself, her family, and the memory of the man who had taught her to carry on. But first, she had to survive the whispers, the doubt, and the crushing weight of her own shattered confidence. The days following the mayor's gala were the longest of Sam's life. Every customer who entered the pub seemed to know about her failure. Some looked at her with pity, others with barely concealed amusement. The regulars who had once cheered her name now avoided eye contact. Worse yet, her tips dropped dramatically. Without the spectacle of her incredible carries, customers saw her as just another waitress, one who had publicly failed at her signature feat. The extra money she desperately needed to support her family began to evaporate. At home, the pressure mounted. Jamie needed new school books. The rent was due again. Margaret's medical bills continued to rise like clockwork. And now, without her supplementary income from tips, Sam found herself falling behind on everything. She took extra shifts wherever she could find them. Early mornings at the bakery stretched longer. Weekend work at the grocery store extended into her only days off. The moving company jobs with Mrs. Patterson became even more crucial. But her body, already pushed to its limits, began to rebel. Her hands shook from exhaustion. Her back ached constantly. Dark circles under her eyes deepened until she looked like a ghost of herself. Jamie noticed. Of course, he watched his sister with growing concern as she dragged herself through each day. "Sam, you don't look well," he said one evening. finding her asleep at the kitchen table, her head resting on a pile of bills. She jerked awake, trying to smile. "I'm fine, just busy." "No, you're not fine. You're killing yourself." Jamie's voice cracked with emotion. "And it's because of me, isn't it? Because you're trying to pay for my school, my books, everything I need." Sam's heart broke at the guilt in his young voice. "Jamie, no. This isn't about you. It is. Ever since Dad died, you've been carrying everything. And now you're carrying so much that you're breaking apart." Tears streamed down his face. "Maybe I should quit school. Get a job. Help you." "Absolutely not." Sam's voice was fierce, protective. She knelt before her brother, gripping his shoulders. "You will finish school. You will follow your dreams. That's not negotiable." "But Sam, no buts. Dad didn't work himself to death at that factory, so you could give up on becoming a mechanic. I won't let you sacrifice your future for our present." That night, alone in her room, Sam made a decision. She would find a way to restore her reputation at the pub, to earn back the tips and admiration that kept her family afloat. But more than that, she would prove to herself that one mistake didn't define her. She began training harder than ever. In her tiny flat, she practiced balancing techniques using books, bottles, anything she could find. She did strength exercises until her muscles screamed. She ran up and down the stairs of their building until her lungs burned. But physical preparation wasn't enough. She needed an opportunity to prove herself again, a chance to show the world and herself that Sam Hale wasn't finished. That opportunity would come sooner than she expected, and it would test her in ways she never imagined. 2 weeks after the mayor's gala, the Rusty Tanker hosted its largest event yet, a city-wide beer festival. Dozens of breweries sponsored, tourists crowded the floor, and journalists came to cover the celebration. Higgins strutted like a proud rooster, barking orders left and right. "Everything has to run smoothly. This night could put us on the map." Sam worked silently, weaving between tables with trays, steady as always. But beneath her calm face, her nerves burned. She couldn't shake the memory of the broken mug. It happened suddenly. A group of drunk festival-goers shoved each other near the bar, knocking over a stacked pyramid of freshly poured mugs, 36 in total, meant for a special brewery presentation. Beer splashed everywhere, glass shattered, and the crowd gasped. Higgins turned red with rage. "Who will fix this?" he roared. "We need 36 more, and we need them now." Bartenders scrambled to refill. But then a journalist shouted, "Let the strong waitress do it, the one who carries them all at once." The crowd picked up the chant, "Sam, Sam, Sam." But this time, the chant felt different. There was doubt in it, mockery. People wanted to see if she could redeem herself or if she would fail again spectacularly. Higgins sneered, cornering her. "Here's your chance to redeem yourself, or fail and you're finished." 36 mugs lined the bar, golden liquid shimmering under the festival lights. Sam stared at them, her heart pounding. This was more than she had ever carried successfully. Her arms already ached from hours of work. But then, through the roar of the crowd, she remembered Jamie's words, "You're the strongest person I know." And her father's. It's about how much you can carry for the people you love. Sam inhaled deeply, rolling her shoulders back. Load them, she told the bartender. One by one. The mug slid into her grip. Fingers, wrists, elbows, forearms, chest. The weight dragged down like iron chains. But her stance was steady. The crowd hushed. Higgins smirked, waiting for her to crack. Carla folded her arms. Convinced this would end in disaster. Sam lifted. Her muscles screamed. Sweat rolled down her brow. But she took the first step, then another. The room seemed to hold its breath. Halfway across the floor, a drunken guest stumbled into her path. Gasps echoed. This was the same scenario that had broken her before. But this time, Sam didn't stumble. She shifted her weight, twisted her body with impossible control, and moved past him without spilling a single drop. The crowd roared, but Sam wasn't done yet. Step by step, she approached the presentation table, her arms trembling under the mountain of mugs. Finally, with one last surge of strength, she lowered the glasses onto the table. Not one broken, not one spill. For a moment, silence. Then the entire pub, no, the entire festival, erupted in cheers. People stood on chairs, clapping and whistling. Journalists snapped photos furiously. The brewery representatives raised their mugs in salute to the strongest woman in the city. Someone shouted. Sam's single quotes as chest heaved with exhaustion, but her smile was steady. She had done it. Higgins's smirk had vanished, replaced by shock. Carla stood frozen, pale with disbelief. Their jealousy and doubt meant nothing now. The whole city had seen what Sam was capable of. Sam didn't gloat, didn't even look their way. She simply wiped her arms and whispered under her breath, strong, steady, proud. That night, Sam Hale didn't just carry mugs. She carried respect, admiration, and the weight of every doubt ever thrown at her, and set them down with unshakable dignity. The girl who had once been mocked as just a waitress had silenced the room, not with words, but with strength. But more importantly, she had silenced the doubt in her own heart. The broken mug at the mayor's gala hadn't defined her. This moment did. As the festival crowd continued to cheer, Sam felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks. Pride in herself, unshakable and pure. She was back, and this time, nothing would knock her down. The night of the beer festival felt like a dream. Applause still echoed in Sam's ears as she woke up the next morning. Her arms sore, but her heart full. For the first time in years, she looked in the mirror and didn't see just a tired waitress. She saw a fighter, a provider, a woman who had carried the impossible and proved herself to an entire city. By noon, newsstands across town carried bold headlines. Waitress stuns city with incredible feat at beer festival. Strength, grace, and dignity. The heroine of the rusty tankard. From failure to triumph. The unstoppable Sam Hale photos of Sam balancing 36 mugs flooded social media. Comments poured in. Admiration, respect, awe. Some called her the strongest waitress in Britain. Others simply said, a true inspiration. When Sam returned home, Jamie was waiting, eyes shining with pride. He waved the newspaper in her face. You're famous, Sam. Everyone at school was talking about you. My sister, the strongest person in the city." Sam laughed softly, ruffling his hair. "Fame doesn't matter, Jamie. What matters is proving to yourself you can do what others think is impossible." Jamie grinned. "Then I'll prove it too. I'll become the best mechanic, just like Dad dreamed. And when people doubt me, I'll remember you carrying all those mugs." Sam's throat tightened with emotion. She hugged him tightly. "That's all I ever wanted, Jamie, for you to dream without fear." At the pub, Mr. Higgins had no choice but to swallow his pride. The festival's success had put the rusty tankard on the map, and customers now flooded in every night. Eager to see the legend at work, he called Sam into his office, clearing his throat awkwardly. "You did well," he muttered. "The festival wouldn't have been a success without you. Consider yourself." Essential staff. Sam hid a smile. For Higgins, that was the highest praise possible. He continued. "And about those rules I implemented. Perhaps they were too restrictive. We'll return to the old policies." Translation: he was lifting the ban on her strength demonstrations. The extra tips would flow again. Even Carla, once full of venom, avoided her gaze now. The jealousy had burned itself out in the fire of Sam's triumph. Over the next few weeks, Sam became more than just a waitress. She became a symbol of resilience. Young women came to the pub just to meet her, asking for advice. Journalists invited her to speak at small events about strength and dignity in the workplace. Sam always said the same thing. Strength isn't about how much you can lift. It's about how much you can carry for the people you love. Local gyms offered her endorsement deals. A fitness magazine wanted to feature her on their cover. A documentary crew approached her about filming her story. But Sam turned them all down. She wasn't interested in fame or fortune. She was interested in stability for her family. With her restored reputation came restored tips. Better yet, Mrs. Patterson's moving company had grown significantly, partly due to word of mouth about Sam's incredible strength. The additional income finally allowed Sam to breathe. One quiet Sunday, Sam took Jamie to the cemetery. She placed fresh flowers on her father's grave and knelt, whispering softly, "Dad, I carried it. All of it, just like you taught me. And I'll keep carrying for Mom, for Jamie, for us." Jamie stood beside her, clutching her hand. Together, they felt the weight of grief ease, replaced by pride. Margaret had begun to improve as well. Seeing her daughter's strength and determination had inspired her to fight her own battles. She started attending therapy regularly, found part-time work at a local library, and slowly began to reclaim her life. "You saved us," she told Sam one evening, tears in her eyes. "Not with money or jobs, but with your example. You showed us how to be strong." But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. One evening, as Sam finished her shift at the rusty tankard, she found a group of elderly men waiting outside. She recognized them immediately. They were steel workers from her father's old factory, men who had known Thomas Hale. "Sam," one of them said, removing his cap respectfully, "we wanted to tell you something. We all knew your dad. Good man, strong man. And watching you these past months, well, "You're just like him." Another nodded. "Thomas would be proud. You've got his strength, his heart, his determination. But you've got something else too. Grace under pressure. You've shown this whole city what real strength looks like." The eldest of the group stepped forward. "Your father used to say that strength wasn't about the weight you could lift, but about the people you could lift up. You've lifted up your family, your community, even that pub." Thomas Hale raised a warrior. Sam's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of joy, of validation, of peace. These men understood. They knew that every mug she carried bore the weight of her father's legacy, her family's survival, and her own unbreakable spirit. Sam's story spread far beyond the pub, far beyond her small industrial town. It wasn't just about beer mugs anymore. It was about courage, perseverance, and dignity in the face of adversity. Local schools invited her to speak to students about determination and hard work. Sam was nervous at first. She'd never been comfortable with public speaking, but she found that her story resonated with young people who were facing their own challenges. "Some of you might think strength is about being the biggest or the loudest," she would tell them. "But real strength is quiet. It's showing up every day, even when you don't want to. It's carrying more than you think you can handle because someone you love needs you to." A video of one of these school presentations went viral, viewed millions of times across social media platforms. Comments poured in from around the world. "This woman is the definition of strength. I'm a single mother working 3 jobs. Sam gives me hope. My father was also a factory worker. This made me cry. But fame brought unexpected challenges." Reporters began digging into her personal life, asking intrusive questions about her family's finances, her mother's depression, her father's death. Some tried to sensationalize her story, focusing on the tragic orphan angle rather than her strength and determination. Sam quickly learned to be selective about which interviews she accepted and which requests she declined. She wanted to inspire people, not become a tabloid sensation. The most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. The International Association of Working Women nominated her for their annual Strength in Service Award, recognizing individuals who exemplify excellence and dignity in service industry jobs. The ceremony was held in London, and Sam had never seen anything like it. The hotel was grander than any building she'd ever entered. The guests wore formal attire that cost more than her monthly rent, and the speeches were given by famous politicians and business leaders. When they called her name, Sam walked to the podium in her best dress, a simple black outfit she'd borrowed from a neighbor. She looked out at the audience of hundreds and felt her father's presence beside her. "I'm honored to receive this award," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "But I want to be clear about something. I'm not special because I can carry 36 mugs of beer. I'm honored because I represent millions of working people who carry impossible loads every day." The audience listened intently as she continued. "Every single mother working multiple jobs to feed her children. She's carrying an impossible load. Every student who works nights to pay for school. He's carrying an impossible load. Every immigrant who leaves everything behind to build a better life. They're carrying an impossible load. Her voice grew stronger, more passionate. "We don't do it for applause or recognition. We do it because we have to. Because people we love depend on us. Because giving up isn't an option. If my story inspires anyone, I hope it's to recognize the strength that already exists in their own lives." The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Back home in her small town, Sam's speech was broadcast on local television. Jamie watched with tears in his eyes, bursting with pride for his sister. Margaret sat beside him, her own eyes wet, marveling at how her daughter had grown from a grieving teenager into a woman of such wisdom and strength. But perhaps the most touching response came from the rusty tankard itself. Without being asked, the regular customers had pooled their money to buy a small plaque that they'd mounted near the bar. It read, "In honor of Sam Hale, who showed us that true strength isn't about what you can lift, but about what you refuse to let fall." Even Higgins seemed moved by it, though he tried to hide his emotion behind his usual gruff exterior. "Well," he muttered to Sam when she saw it for the first time, "I suppose it's good for business." But his small smile betrayed his true feelings. Carla, meanwhile, had undergone her own transformation. Witnessing Sam's grace under pressure, her dedication to family, and her refusal to be broken by setbacks had forced Carla to examine her own behavior. She approached Sam privately one evening. "I owe you an apology," she said. Unable to meet Sam's eyes, "I was jealous, and I took it out on you. That was wrong. You've shown me what real strength looks like, and it's not what I thought." Sam nodded, accepting the apology with characteristic grace. "We all carry different burdens, Carla. I understand why you felt threatened, but we're stronger when we support each other." From that night forward, Carla became one of Sam's most steadfast allies at the pub. Life had settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Sam's reputation was secure, her income stable, and her family thriving. Jamie was excelling in school, already building relationships with local mechanics who promised him apprenticeships after graduation. Margaret had found full-time work and was attending therapy regularly, her smile returning gradually but genuinely for the first time since her father's death. Sam allowed herself to hope that the worst was behind them. She should have known that life doesn't stay stable for long. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Sam was getting ready for her shift at the bakery when her phone rang. The voice on the other end was professional but urgent. "Miss Hale, this is Dr. Roman from City General Hospital. Your mother has been brought to the emergency department. You need to come immediately." The world tilted. Sam's hands trembled as she grabbed her keys, barely remembering to tell Jamie where she was going before rushing out the door. At the hospital, she found Margaret unconscious, surrounded by machines and for tubes. "A heart attack," the doctors explained. "Severe, but not necessarily fatal if treated aggressively." But the treatment was expensive. Even with their basic health insurance, the bills would be astronomical. The surgery alone would cost more than Sam made in a year. "We need to operate immediately," Dr. Roman explained. "But I have to be honest with you about the financial implications. This will be a significant expense." Sam didn't hesitate. "Do whatever you need to do. I'll find the money." The next 72 hours were a blur. Margaret survived the surgery, but remained in intensive care, her condition critical. Jamie camped out in the waiting room, refusing to leave his mother's side. And Sam faced the crushing realization that all her careful budgeting, all her multiple jobs, all her strength meant nothing against the brutal arithmetic of medical bills. She needed more money than she could possibly earn through conventional means. Desperately, she began exploring options she'd never considered before. A local gym owner, who'd been following her story in the news, approached her with an offer. "I'll sponsor you," he said. "Professional strong woman competitions. The prize money could be substantial, and I'll cover your training expenses. You have natural talent that could translate into real earning potential." Sam was intrigued but hesitant. "I don't know anything about competitive lifting." "You don't need to. What you do at the pub, functional strength, endurance, balance under pressure, that's more valuable than pure lifting power. There are competitions specifically for what you do best." Another opportunity came from an unexpected source: reality television. A producer had seen the viral video of her school presentation and wanted to feature her on a show about ordinary people with extraordinary talents. "The appearance fee alone would cover your mother's surgery," the producer explained over the phone. "And if you win the competition, the prize money would set your family up for life." Both options offered solutions to her immediate crisis, but both also meant leaving town, leaving her jobs, leaving Jamie alone while their mother fought for her life. As Sam sat in the hospital corridor, exhaustion weighing on her like a physical force, she realized she was facing the ultimate test of everything she'd learned about strength. This wasn't about carrying mugs anymore. This was about carrying her family through the darkest moment of their lives. And the weight of it felt heavier than anything she'd ever lifted before. Jamie found her there at 2 a.m., slumped in an uncomfortable plastic chair, staring at nothing. "Sam?" His voice was small, scared. "Is Mom going to be okay?" She pulled him close, forcing strength she didn't feel into her voice. "She's going to be fine. We're going to get through this." "How?" "I heard you talking to the doctors about money. I know how much this costs." Sam was quiet for a long moment, then made a decision that surprised, even hurt Jamie. "What would you think if I told you I might have to go away for a while? To compete in some strength competitions, maybe appear on television. The money could save Mom and secure our future." Jamie looked up at her with eyes far too mature for his age. "Would it help Mom?" "Yes." "Then you have to do it." "But Sam?" He gripped her hand tightly. "Promise me you'll come back. Promise me you won't get hurt trying to carry more than even you can handle." Sam squeezed his hand, making a vow that she hoped she could keep. "I promise, Jamie. I'll carry exactly as much as I need to, and then I'll come home." The next morning, Sam made her calls. She accepted both opportunities: the strong woman competition circuit and the reality television show. It would mean 3 months away from home, pushing her body beyond any limit she'd ever tested. But as she looked at her mother's pale face in the hospital bed, listened to Jamie's worried breathing as he slept in the chair beside her, Sam knew she had no choice. She had carried her family this far. She would find a way to carry them through this too, even if it meant risking everything: her health, her reputation, her life, in the process. The ultimate test wasn't about strength anymore. It was about how much she was willing to sacrifice for love. And Sam Hale had never met a weight she couldn't bear when the people she loved were depending on her. 1 year later, Sam stood in the same cemetery where she'd once promised her father she would carry on. But this time, she wasn't alone. Margaret stood beside her, healthy and strong, her color returned and her smile genuine. Jamie was there too, now 17 and already accepted into the city's premier technical college with a full scholarship for aspiring mechanics. The past year had been a whirlwind that still felt surreal. The strong woman competitions had been brutal, not just physically, but mentally, competing against women who'd trained their entire lives for these events. Sam had to rely on her unique combination of functional strength, endurance, and mental toughness. She hadn't won every competition, but she'd won enough. More importantly, she discovered that her story resonated with audiences far beyond what anyone had expected. The reality television show had been renewed for a second season, with Sam as a featured mentor helping other working-class people overcome seemingly impossible challenges. The prize money and appearance fees had covered Margaret's medical bills completely, with enough left over to secure a real emergency fund for the family. For the first time in her adult life, Sam wasn't living paycheck to paycheck, but the financial success wasn't what she treasured most. "Look at this," Jamie said, pulling a worn newspaper clipping from his wallet. It was the article about her first big competition victory. Headlined working class hero carries hometown hope to national championship. "I keep this with me," he explained. "Whenever I doubt myself, whenever someone tells me I can't do something because of where I come from, I remember that my sister proved them all wrong." Margaret nodded, tears in her eyes. "You gave us more than money, Sammy. You gave us pride. You showed us we don't have to apologize for who we are or where we come from." Sam looked at her father's gravestone, thinking about how much had changed since that first night at the Rusty Tankard when she'd carried 12 mugs and amazed a crowd. The girl who'd been mocked as just a waitress was now a nationally recognized athlete and motivational speaker. The young woman who'd struggled to pay rent was now financially secure. The daughter who'd felt crushed by responsibility was now proud of everything she'd carried. But at her core, she was still the same person her father had raised, strong, steady, proud. The Rusty Tankard had mounted a second plaque during her time away. This one read, "Sam Hale proved that heroism isn't about superpowers. It's about refusing to give up when people you love are counting on you." Higgins had retired, selling the pub to a younger manager who'd immediately instituted Sam Hale Night, a weekly celebration where local working people were recognized for their contributions to the community. Carla now managed the wait staff and had become an advocate for better working conditions throughout the industry. But perhaps the most meaningful change was in the young people who sought Sam out for advice. They came from all backgrounds: students struggling to pay for school, single parents working multiple jobs, immigrants building new lives, anyone carrying what felt like an impossible load. Sam's message to them was always the same: you're already stronger than you know. The weight you're carrying isn't breaking you, it's building you. Trust yourself, Take it one step at a time, and remember that you're not carrying it alone. A documentary about her journey had aired nationally, focusing not on her physical feats, but on her character. The filmmaker had interviewed dozens of people whose lives she'd touched, from fellow competitors who'd been inspired by her work ethic to young women who'd found the courage to pursue their dreams after hearing her speak. The final scene of the documentary showed Sam back at the rusty tankard, not as a struggling waitress, but as a local hero returning to her roots. The pub was packed with faces both familiar and new. When she walked to the bar and effortlessly lifted a tray of mugs, just 6 now, a reasonable load, the crowd didn't erupt in amazement. They erupted in respect, because they understood what Sam had always known. True strength isn't about the spectacle. It's about showing up, doing the work, and carrying what needs to be carried. As Sam, Margaret, and Jamie walked away from the cemetery that day, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows behind them, Sam reflected on her father's words that had guided her through everything. Strength isn't about how much you can lift. It's about how much you can carry for the people you love. She had carried her family from the depths of grief to the heights of pride. She had carried herself from doubt to confidence. She had carried a message of hope to countless people who needed to hear that they were stronger than their circumstances, and she was still carrying, still lifting, still proving that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when love demanded it. The weight never got lighter, but Sam Hale had learned that she could always get stronger. And that made all the difference. The strength of Sam Hale is a testament to the quiet heroism found in ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. It explores themes of family responsibility, perseverance in the face of doubt, and the true meaning of strength. Sam's journey from a struggling waitress to a symbol of resilience reminds us that greatness isn't measured by wealth or fame, but by our willingness to carry whatever load life places before us, especially when the people we love are depending on us. The story celebrates working-class dignity, the power of determination, and the truth that sometimes the strongest people are found not in gyms or competitions, but in pubs, diners, and small apartments, where quiet heroes carry impossible weights with grace, dignity, and unshakable love.